I'm thrilled to be here. I am really excited to hear that already this program has been effective. It sounds like there's been some really important information conveyed. That's why we did this. I want to especially thank the Federal Trade Commission. I want to thank the Attorney General's office. I want to thank everyone who helped put this event together with us. I think it's very important. It's unfortunate, and you know this, and that's why you're here. The headlines are clear that Florida is suffering from really just a devastating amount of identity theft and tax fraud. As a member of Congress whose office gets calls regularly from constituents, and I'm sorry to say, we get phone calls all too often from constituents who are concerned about identity theft, financial scams, abuse in the Medicare system, tax fraud, almost always because they've been on the receiving end of it. And it's clear that the federal government has to do more to protect consumers from these crimes. Today, we see criminals using stolen names and stolen Social Security numbers to file phony tax returns, to claim refunds that are not theirs. They exploit the IRS, which often moves slowly to collect money before the victims even realize what happened to them. And that's particularly true for some of the calls that we receive in our office. The victims in these cases are hardworking taxpayers. They've done nothing wrong. They are really victims. And I know that some will say that $21 billion worth of fraud, really, it doesn't amount to much given the over $1 trillion collected by the IRS from individual taxpayers. But in this fiscal climate, where literally every national priority is under assault by some in Washington who want to continue to cut at every turn, every little bit counts. And so it's time for all of us to realize, and that's really what this is about. It's time for all of us to realize that identity theft is becoming a dangerous enterprise, not just because of the impact on the victims, but more and more it's becoming a dangerous criminal enterprise. According to the Treasury Department, tax-related identity theft has exploded into not just an illegal, but often a gang-related industry that costs, as I said, now over $21 billion a year. Unlike Medicare fraud, which unfortunately we see too much of as well in this area, this type of identity theft is often associated with violence, with gangs. There are bribes, there's intimidation, there are often threats that are used against workers in hospitals, large companies, government agencies, and even schools to access sensitive information that can then be used to file a refund claim. That's what we're battling against. Law enforcement understands that and is on the front lines in trying to combat the growing violent nature of this awful scourge that we face. Victims in Florida and in South Florida have varied from hospital patients. There was a Holocaust survivor at an elderly Jewish community center that was victimized. Active duty military serving overseas have been the victims of identity theft. That's why we need to act. So last Congress, I co-sponsored a bill with my Florida colleagues, Congressman Castor and Congressman Nugent. We had suggested in the legislation, and we have seen a 70% increase in investigations by the IRS, 60% increase in cases recommended for prosecution, 67% increase actually in prosecution. And there are new screening mechanisms that are being used to flag possible fraud. For example, if multiple tax returns go to the same bank account, or checks are mailed multiple times to a single mailing address, or one taxpayer claims an unusual amount of credits, IRS agents will be flagged that there's possible fraudulent activity that could be underway. Just last week, the IRS announced that it would be intensifying its crackdown on identity theft, with 3,000 agents devoted to tackling the problem, which is twice the number from just 2011. And while I applaud the IRS for taking these steps, I have joined with my colleagues once again to file legislation to ensure that new protections for taxpayers are actually put into our laws, and that penalties for these crimes are increased. And I'll just quickly touch on what we're trying to accomplish in the Tax Crime and Identity Theft Prevention Act. Number one is the disclosure of return information. which will allow a state or allow a local government to set up an identity theft task force under which there can be coordination between the state and the IRS, or the local government and the IRS, on sharing of tax-related information. That way, the IRS can still oversee what it needs to, which is the sharing of tax information, but the task force can then run with it if the IRS declines to move forward on prosecution. It's one more avenue for law enforcement to pursue these claims. I also think that we need to expedite the resolution from the IRS on these identity theft cases, to give the IRS 90 days to clean a taxpayer's file after identity theft has been committed so that it doesn't continue to get worse. I think the criminal penalties, and we've proposed that criminal penalties be increased in connection with tax fraud, with fines no less than $25,000 for individual filing and $200,000, no less than $200,000 in the case of filing as a corporation. And also increase penalties against tax preparers and others who improperly disclose tax identification numbers or other tax information. We want to expand the program to create a pilot program to institute a unique personal identification number system for those whose identities have been stolen, so that they don't have to continue to use their Social Security number, which they're aware has already been stolen from them. And then just a couple of more, we authorized the IRS to reallocate up to $10 million from other accounts within the IRS to identify theft investigations and prevention efforts, and to report back to Congress about exactly what it's doing. The IRS should then report to Congress on an annual basis on these tax fraud reports and the reports received from state and local law enforcement authorities, and most importantly, to report on the actions that have been taken once these reports have been filed. There are a lot of issues that I deal with as a member of Congress, and we get a lot of phone calls in our office from people who need help from the federal government in one way or another. But I will tell you that the saddest cases that we receive so often come from people who didn't, unbeknownst to them, had their identity stolen. And as they went on living their lives, someone else was living their life as well, and collecting their money and stealing from them. The reason that we wanted to work with our partners in Washington to put this meeting together this morning was twofold. One, we want to provide information to the community, and two, we want the community to understand that we know how important an issue this is, and that all of us in Washington, whether at a federal agency or in Congress, are working hard to take steps to make sure the people who commit this crime are prosecuted, to help the people who have been the victims of this crime, and to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure to limit the number of occasions that this happens in the future. I am really grateful again to all of the people who have helped coordinate this program with us. I am thrilled to be here. I hope the information has been helpful. I look forward to hearing more information, and we're going to take a few questions, I think. So I'm happy to answer a few questions as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Or 0. And you should.
I'm probably going to crack up, but I'm a senior, and I'm from a large family, and we're always told to take care of people, never ask for anything. And I feel that I've been really taken as a result of being nice to several of my neighbors. Whenever they needed anything, I took them shopping and so forth and everything. And I think as seniors, we have to be careful that we do a lot of things, and all of a sudden, when we tell them we can't help them anymore because they're taking advantage of us, all of a sudden they receive help from their family because they know that the person that's been helping them free of charge and as being a good neighbor has finally stopped dealing with them. And unfortunately, I have 2 cases. That's all I want to say as far as the senior is concerned, that even people that you think are your friends are no longer your friends.
I would also Yeah, I appreciate your saying that. I would tell you, in addition to the legislation that I described, which is focused on identity theft, there's legislation that I introduced in the last Congress that we are going to be reintroducing, and we're just now finalizing it, that focuses specifically on senior fraud, that will create in the office of the Federal Trade Commission a specific task force, a specific place where seniors can call and get real-time action on their complaints. Again, it's more of what I described, the phone calls from people, from seniors who thought that they were being helpful, who are so often the victims of fraud aimed directly at them. It's another area that we also have to be serious about. And our legislation, I'll get back to you when we release it, but we're working to ensure that we crack down on those who can see fraud against seniors as well.
Hi, Congressman. I'm repeating a question I asked earlier that I was advised to direct to you, which is the Congress doing anything to change having one Social Security number on Medicare cards?
Yes. The Congress actually did. Medicare at this point, going forward, new Medicare cards that are issued should not have Social Security numbers on them. The problem is that we also want CMS, we want Medicare to reissue cards without the Social Security number, with a unique identification number instead. We continue to battle, frankly, because they claim they don't have the funding to do it. We're pointing out the huge cost, the potential cost to the economy and to seniors if they don't do it because of identity theft. In the meantime, someone suggested to me, and I've not gotten back reports from anyone that I've ever told this to, but the Social Security Administration in particular has sometimes suggested that if you take your Medicare card and you make a copy of it, and you black out the Social Security number on the copy, that doctors will still accept that when you go to see the doctor. So I've told people that advice has been given to me. I've passed it on to others. We've had no one call us back to tell us that thanks, but the doctor refuses to see us unless the number's on there. So that's something that can be done even as we wait for Medicare to act.
Does anyone have any other questions?
In the way of more good information. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for participating, and I look forward to the rest of the program.